My next guest is Bobby Davro, and I believe it's his birthday tomorrow. Hi, Bobby.
Tomorrow I'm 60. I'm pushing 60. Actually, I'm dragging it now. I'm 62.
Yeah, and is that tomorrow?
It's tomorrow the 13th, but they always say that 60 is the new 30, but try saying that to speed cameras on the A3.
Well, many happy returns, mate. Many happy returns. Thank you for joining me. I was attracted to having you on this show because I read an article with you at the weekend about where you got involved in the big argument at the moment about the BBC getting rid of left-wing comedians and maybe, just maybe, bringing in a new policy of making comedy funny. I think people like you and Jim Davidson, both very funny men, should be back on the telly. Why aren't people like you on the telly anymore?
Basically, I always like to say to the audience if I sound a bit croaky, by the way, Kevin, I had a party last night and I'm slightly hungover.
Yeah, okay, don't worry, mate. I understand.
So why aren't we on telly? I think it's more sort of a perception of what we were. It's not necessarily true. I think Jim Davidson happens to be one of the best comedians I've ever seen, regardless of the material, of course, because you can't be liked by everybody. That's the thing. A sense of humour is a personal thing. But when they say it's got to be right wing, I'm not really very political. I just think it should be a little bit more balanced,
I don't think they're necessarily saying. I don't think the BBC is necessarily saying we must make comedy right wing. They are quite rightly saying our comedy, all the comedy on the BBC, has become like a left wing party political broadcast. I don't know if you've ever endured the MASH report.
There is a generation that's not being served, I don't think. And to be truthful, because you meet people of my age or maybe slightly older, they go, we don't get the young comedians. But the young comedians are brilliant. I mean, some of the very best. They're fantastic. But the older people don't get them.
Yeah.
They still want to see more traditional stuff. And when people say, you're not funny because you tell jokes or you represent the 80s, if it wasn't funny, people wouldn't laugh at it. So when you come and see one of my gigs or one of Jim's or anyone from my generation, people are still laughing.
Well, I can tell people. I've seen you live, and you're very, very funny. When you're you're sort of let loose, and you don't have the restrictions of being on telly. Trust me, folks, this guy is hilarious. But you were talking about programs like Mrs. Brown's Boys, which the BBC seems almost embarrassed to have in its portfolio, and yet 9 million people were watching that at one point, and people love this show. I mean, I'm one of those snooty critics that don't particularly like it, but I bow to popularity. It's nothing to do with what I think. If 9 million people love this show and it's based on a simple sort of slapstick principle, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it?
Well, that's my whole point. I think that they should have more balance. I think that it should be more balanced. If people like it, put that kind of comedy on it, as well as the left-wing stuff. If you're looking at it as a left-wing thing, I don't tend to look at it in a political sense, but it does seem that everyone's bashing Boris. Mm-hmm. And it seems easy target. Why don't we bash the Labour Party a bit more, or the Liberals or whatever?
Yeah,
I think that I think I've been telling the same joke basically for every Prime Minister that's come in that I could impersonate. So when I see John Major, I did the same joke. I do it as Donald Trump. It's a fantastic joke, but it's too rude for the radio. I got to tell you, and it's I did the same joke for Tony Blair, and it's something that goes to me. It goes across the whole spectrum of comedy. I think that people perceive people like Jim Davidson and myself, because we were around in the 80s, that we are racist and sexist. I don't classify myself as racist or sexist.
Well, you said
dilemma. Yeah. There's a dilemma now for comedians, and I think it would apply to the young comedians, that if I do audience participation, and if I get three ladies up to do backing vocals, and if I do the same jokes basically every time I get three ladies up, and if I got a black lady up, people would go, he's being racist to that lady, which I'm not. And if you ignore them and they're in the audience, black folk, they'd go, you ignored them, so you're racist again. So how do we even that up? What's the right choice?
Yeah. Well, you said that people like you and Jim, comedians who were around in the 1980s, far less politically correct, woke times. You regularly made jokes about black people, gays, women, but you didn't. But you didn't. Well, I mean,
in 92, I looked at a video, Kevin, of me back in 1992, and there's jokes I was horrified at. Yes.
Yeah.
I said we were all racist.
Okay.
We all accepted it then.
But it wasn't to laugh at them. It wasn't to laugh at people, was it? It was to all have a laugh.
People. I mean, the argument that Jim has about his chalky character, it was an actual character. It wasn't. I don't think it was belittling black people necessarily. I think it was including them. They laughed with black people, not at black people. I think that's valid still.
Yeah, yeah. To go back to some of the programs we loved, and you quoted "Are You Being Served?" and one of my favourites, "On the Buses." Why can't we bring "On the Buses" back? I guess the cast are probably mostly dead, but that was the carry-on saucy humour that used to be the staple diet of comedy in Britain. Somehow or other, in the last 20 years, that's become almost a no-no. It's become like pariah-like.
Well, I find that strange when you say that, because if you go and see that great comedian Jimmy Carr is a fantastic comedian. There's a one-line comic, and he does stuff which, quite frankly, is a lot stronger and more controversial than I do or Jim Davidson does. It's pretty much the same thing, but because he's contemporary, he seems to be able to get away with it. But people that are in the past don't.
It is true. It's like some people like you and Jim Davidson have to be a lot more careful than Jimmy Carr and some of the more modern comedians. But I think the whole thing about TV comedy is, which you and Jim should be back on, by the way, is people who ran the channels, they used to say, "Is this funny?" Now the first thing they say, is it diverse? Is there diversity in it? And they tick all the boxes except the one marked, is it funny? That's what comedy's about. Comedy's about being funny, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I don't tend to like political comment as I don't laugh at as much of that. I think the funniest line I ever saw was Freddie Starr, and he, to me, was an incredibly funny man. But it's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. People that might not like Jim Davidson and like another comedian, it swaps over, doesn't it? I never get offended by people that don't laugh at me. It's just not their cup of tea. And I love the quote that I think it was Ricky Gervais did. He said, "I'd like £1 for everybody I've offended with my comedy." I have got £1 for every person I've offended with my comedy. And I think it's just it's taste in a way. It's taste. And the younger people are given the comedians that they see on the television. They're given that because that's what's served to them, and they're bloody good comedians as well. I'm not knocking out, but anyone stands up and tries to make people laugh. It's quite a difficult job at times. But I think that older people should also be given some of the more traditional stuff. I'd like a fair balance, I think.
Absolutely.
Spectator, that doesn't mean I want to jump back on the telly. I'd still like to be involved.
Yeah. Well, why didn't you go back to EastEnders? Vinny, your character, wasn't it? Why didn't he go back?
Really, didn't I? I mean, come on. Kevin. I might be deemed as sexist. I do loads of jokes about Shirley in my act if I talk about EastEnders, but it's not meant seriously, it's just acting.
Poor Shirley. Leave her alone. So we're talking of money. It must have been tough for someone like yourself, a performer, a live performer. That's where most of your career has taken place. The lockdown, you haven't been able to do your job, have you?
No, my entire income went, apart from the odd thing here and there, a couple of adverts and bits and bobs. It's dreadful, really. I mean, I'm not alone. I shouldn't bleat on about it, because every comedian, there's nowhere to work there.
No. And is it the case you had to sell your house? You said so in this article I read. Well,
I had to sell it anyway, really. And, I have sold it, but when the council find out, they're murdered. The thing is that, yes, in a way. And the worst part about it is, I don't know when it's going to improve for us. I don't know if it's going to get back to normal. And of course, if I go and get a mortgage on another house or something, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay the mortgage back. quite simple as that. It's really quite as straightforward as that. And I'm sure I'm not alone. There must be millions of people that have lost their jobs.
Yeah, but it's been particularly hard on the glamorous world of showbiz. Any light at the end of the tunnel? Any job prospects for you as we allegedly come more and more back towards normal?
Check out at Morrison's, maybe? No, there isn't anything on the horizon at the minute. I mean, I lost the pantomime tour yesterday. I lost all my summer work. I lost all my corporate work, golf events and things that I do through the summer. And I've lost the pantomime this year because there's no pantomimes this year. It's terrible.
It is terrible, isn't it? I mean, you've just run through all the... I mean, you had quite rightly, a golden career going, and it's just gone. Not your fault, but it's gone, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It's very sad. They're not helping the entertainment people. You know, they're not. I think leisure and entertainment are the hardest hit industries, but they're not helping. I mean, I've managed to get a loan from the government, but of course I have to pay that back. So that's not really a handout. But it's bloody scary.
It is scary.
I don't know what else to do.
What about? I mean, why don't you get in touch with EastEnders? Bring your character back, though.
Well, I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
He was good. He was good.
Well, I was all right. I didn't go mad on the character. He was a bit of a loser.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. He was an annoying loser. It was a kind of Olympic class loser, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And I didn't really feel like that was the character for me. That's the one they chose. That's what you rely on the writers. And I would have stayed there, but I had to make an income, a bigger income, and I couldn't do it really. And I said to them, I'd willingly give up a pantomime because if I'm not being, I don't mean to sound conceited, but one of the top pantomime performers because I know
you are. Yeah, no, and the money for those pantomimes is not bad, is it?
No, it's a very good income for the pantomime, and of course they wouldn't let you do it if you were, if you were in EastEnders, they wouldn't let you go and do a pantomime. And I said I'm quite happy to give up for a year as long as you give me a good storyline, but they couldn't really promise me that, so I sort of had to go and do the pantomime. That's what it was.
There won't be any pantos this year, of course. I don't know. I hardly know what to say, Bobby. But I want to thank you for your time. Wish you a happy birthday. And I think, honestly, I think things will get back better. We'll get back on our feet at some point, and you deserve all the success that's out there. You really do. So
I've been going a long time. And, it's all I know. And I do hope it comes back because it's not only my income, it's the love that I have for the performance. I absolutely love it.
Oh, by the way, absolutely, Bobby. But on a personal note, Davro, your real name's Nankivell, isn't it? Does Davro come from Davro's discount store in Ashford, Middlesex?
Well, yes, but the name was made up from my brother David and me being Robert. So my dad put together the dad of David and the other. Robin called it Davro. I couldn't think of a better name. Yeah. And I've had a pretty bad year this year because my dad's not well. Yeah,
because your dad, let's just tell the listeners, your dad, Bill Nankivell, was a big star himself. He was one of our Olympic heroes back in the 50s, wasn't he?
Yes, he ran in 2 Olympics, 48 and 52, with Roger Bannister and Chris Chataway on the Olympic side. And I'm very proud of him. Sadly, he's been very poorly. And we went to look after him. He wanted to go to the loo, and he actually sort of his legs gave way because he's 95, and he can still touch his toes though with his testicles. That's okay. and he collapsed. His little legs went, and as I sort of nurtured him in the hallway till the ambulance came because I couldn't pick him up. It was underneath the picture of him running in the Olympics.
Oh dear, that's kind of sad, isn't it? Very sad. It's sort of a life story there encapsulated. But it's just like because I remember Davro's disco store because I was brought up in. That's where I grew up in Ashford, Middlesex. So a little bit of personal connection there. I think we lost a line to Bobby there. So but we were going to come in. Are you there? Still there, Bobby? Hello, mate.
In Ashford.
Yeah, that's where I went. That's where I was brought up, and I remember Davro's discount stores.
Live in which street?
Wolsey Road.
I know Wolsey Road.
There you go. Number 9. It's not. We don't live there anymore. But listen, Bobby, great to touch base about Ashford, Middlesex. I wish you and your dad, an Olympic hero of this country, all the best. And I wish you all the best and you get your career back on track. I'm sure you will. A man of such talent cannot be kept down.